First impressions, the old bookstore smelled of paper and possibility. Rain tapped against the windows, creating a cozy atmosphere inside tattered covers, where Julian Reed found himself hiding from both the weather and his responsibilities. He ran his fingers along the spines of travel guides, imagining escapes to places where nobody knew his name or net worth. At 36, Julian had built quantum reach from his college dorm room into a tech empire valued at billions. The journey had cost him genuine connections. People either wanted something from him or were intimidated by his success. Today, dressed in worn jeans and a faded university sweatshirt, he blended in with the other bookstore patrons seeking shelter from the storm. "You're holding that upside down," a voice said, breaking his reverie. Julian looked up to find a woman with curly auburn hair smiling at him, amusement dancing in her eyes. He glanced down at the book in his hands. Indeed, he'd been staring at an upside-down guide to Portugal. "I was testing if it looks better from this angle," he replied with a sheepish grin. The verdict: "It doesn't." She laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "I'm Olivia Bennett. I work here part-time on weekends." She wore a simple green apron with the bookstore's logo, and Julian noticed paint splattered across her sneakers. "Julian, it's just browsing, although apparently not very effectively. You planning a trip?" she asked, nodding toward the travel section. "Always planning, rarely going," he admitted. "Work has a way of complicating things." Olivia tilted her head. "That's a shame. Life's too short to only dream about the places you want to see." Something about her directness intrigued him. Most people in Seattle seem to communicate in layers of politeness and subtext. "What about you? Any dream destinations?" "New Mexico," she answered without hesitation. "I want to paint the desert light. I'm an art teacher at Franklin Elementary, but I do my own work when I can." Julian found himself genuinely curious. An art teacher who works at a bookstore on weekends. "You must really love books, really love making rent," she countered with a pragmatic smile. "Teaching doesn't pay what it should, especially in this city." The honesty refreshed him. For years, he'd navigated conversations where people either tried to impress him or extract something from him. Olivia seemed to have no agenda beyond chatting with a stranger on a rainy afternoon. "Ah?" he said, pointing. "It's much more interesting than staring at upside-down travel guides." "Portugal is calling you. There's a great photo book of Lisbon on the end cap." "Thanks for the rescue," Julian said. "Any personal recommendations?" She considered this, then walked him to a shelf and pulled out a novel. "This one. It's about a man who loses everything material but finds something more valuable." Her phone buzzed. "Sorry, my break's over. Enjoy your browsing, Julian." As she walked away, Julian found himself standing there, book in hand, feeling an unfamiliar flutter of anticipation. Before he could overthink it, he followed her to the counter. "Olivia, would you maybe want to grab coffee sometime?" "To tell me more about this book?" She looked surprised, then thoughtful. "There's a little cafe down the street, Brewed Awakening. I'm free Wednesday after school, around 4. "Wednesday at 4, Julian repeated, surprised at how easily she'd agreed. No exchanging Instagram profiles to vet his status. No questions about what he did for work. He bought the book and left his number on the receipt. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the city seemed somehow brighter than before. For the first time in years, Julian felt like just a man who'd met an interesting woman in a bookstore at a Billionaire. Not a CEO, just Julian Reed with an upside-down travel guide and a Wednesday coffee date. Truth and Consequences Wednesday arrived with unusual sunshine for Seattle in November. Julian arrived at Brewed Awakening 15 minutes early, selecting a corner table that offered both privacy and a view of the door. He'd spent the past 3 days thinking about Olivia more than he cared to admit. The cafe buzzed with afternoon energy students with laptops, freelancers tapping away at keyboards, and the steady hiss of the espresso machine. Julian had dressed down again, this time deliberately faded jeans, a simple gray sweater, the watch his father had given him when he graduated college. Before quantum reach existed, before the billions, Olivia entered at precisely 4 o'clock, unwinding a colorful scarf from her neck. Today, her curls were pulled back loosely, and flecks of paint dotted her hands despite obvious attempts to scrub them clean. She carried a worn leather messenger bag bulging with papers. "Sorry if I look frazzled," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. 28 third graders making Thanksgiving hand turkeys is beautiful chaos. Julian smiled. "I can only imagine. Coffee's on me, what would you like?" After ordering a simple black coffee for him, a chai latte for her, they fell into surprisingly easy conversation. Julian found himself genuinely interested in her stories about teaching art to children who saw possibilities where adults saw limitations. "What about you?" she eventually asked. "You never said what you do." Question he'd been both expecting and dreading. Julian took a breath. "I work in tech. I founded a company called Quantum Reach." He watched her face, waiting for the recognition. For most people in Seattle, especially those in their 30s, his company name was instantly familiar. It powered half the apps on their phones. Her brow furrowed slightly. "That sounds familiar. Wait, is that the one with the quantum computing breakthrough last year? I think I read something about it." "That's us," Julian said, feeling both relieved and oddly disappointed at her partial recognition. "I started it in college." "It's impressive," she said, seeming genuinely interested, but not overly awed. "Do you still enjoy it? Running a company, I mean?" "Most days," he answered honestly, "though it's grown so much that sometimes I miss the early days when we were just solving interesting problems instead of managing thousands of employees." And he hesitated, then decided to take the plunge. "Olivia, I should probably tell you something." She looked at him expectantly, taking a sip of her chai. "Quantum Reach isn't just successful, it's actually..." He struggled with the words that usually weren't this difficult. "The company's worth billions, and I'm still the majority shareholder. I'm what people would call extremely wealthy." Julian braced himself for the shift, the widened eyes, the sudden reassessment, the subtle changes in posture and tone that he'd become accustomed to when people discovered his net worth. Olivia set her mug down slowly. "Wow, that's a lot to process." She looked at him directly, her expression thoughtful. "Why are you telling me this now?" The question caught him off guard. "Because I wanted you to know who I really am. And because people tend to act differently once they know, and you wanted to see if I would too." There was no accusation in her voice, just curiosity. Julian nodded, feeling suddenly transparent. "Yes, well," she said after a moment, "I appreciate the honesty. But you know what I'm actually curious about? Whether you finished that book I recommended?" Julian blinked, then laughed with genuine surprise. "I did, actually. Stayed up too late last night to finish it, and," she prompted, leaning forward slightly. "It was illuminating. The way the main character had to redefine his sense of self. When everything external was stripped away." Olivia smiled. "That's what I love about it. We're not what we own or what we do. We're how we treat people, what we notice, what moves us." She paused. "So, Julianne, a billionaire, what moves you?" The directness of her question, the lack of pretense, left him momentarily speechless. He found himself answering with a truth he rarely acknowledged. Connection. Real connection has become ... rare in my life. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Money changes how people see you, I imagine, but it doesn't change who you are unless you let it." Their conversation continued past one coffee and into a second, then dinner at the small Thai restaurant next door. Julian found himself telling her about growing up as the son of a physics professor and a librarian, about coding through college, nights about the thrill of solving impossible problems. Olivia shared her struggles with Seattle's rising costs, her dream of a small art studio, her dedication to students from underserved communities. The evening passed with startling ease, neither of them checking phones or watches, as they finally stepped outside into the cool evening air. Julian felt lighter than he had in years. "I'd like to see you again," he said simply. Olivia looked up. At him, her expression open but thoughtful. "I'd like that too, but Julian, I need to know this isn't some experiment or novelty for you dating someone from a completely different world." "It's not," he said, realizing as he spoke that he meant, this feels ... different." "Good," she said, then stretched up on tiptoes to kiss his cheek. "Because billionaire or not, I still expect you to text back in a reasonable time frame." As she walked toward the bus stop, Julian touched his cheek, smiling. For the first time in years, someone was seeing past his wealth to the person underneath. He was remembering who that person used to be. Worlds colliding. 3 weeks into dating Olivia, Julian realized he was living 2 distinctly different lives. By day, he commanded boardrooms and made decisions affecting thousands of employees and millions of users. By evening, he was simply Julian, the man who brought takeout to Olivia's tiny apartment and helped grade art projects on her living room floor. Tonight, however, worlds would collide. He'd invited Olivia to the annual Quantum Reach Foundation Gala Black Tie, a charity event that raised millions for STEM education in underserved communities. Julian adjusted his bow tie in the mirror of his downtown penthouse. His assistant, Dominic, hovered nearby. "The car will be ready in 20 minutes, sir." Ms. Frost called again about the Bloomberg interview. "Tell Vivian I'll call her tomorrow," Julian replied, referring to his PR director. "Tonight is personal." Dominic nodded, expression neutral, but eyes curious. In 5 years, Julian had never brought a date to the Foundation Gala. The luxury car glided through Seattle's rainy streets to Olivia's modest apartment building in Fremont. Julian had offered to send a dress, a stylist, a car. Olivia had politely declined everything except the ride to the venue. When she emerged from her building, Julian's breath caught. She wore a deep green velvet dress, vintage by the look of it, with her auburn curls swept up elegantly. Simple pearl earrings, her grandmother's, she'd mentioned, once completed the look. She carried a small silver clutch and looked simultaneously nervous and determined. "You look beautiful," he said, meaning it more than she could know. "Thank you," she replied, smoothing the dress self-consciously. "This was my splurge when I got my teaching position. I've worn it exactly twice." In the car, Julian noticed her examining the leather interior, the privacy partition, the small bar. Not with envy or awe, but with the same thoughtful observation she applied to everything. "Nervous?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "I've never been to a gala where the entrance fee could pay off my student loans." Julian winced. "I should have warned you more about what to expect." "It's fine," she said, reaching for his hand. "I want to see this part of your life. Just ... stay close." "Promise," he replied, squeezing her hand. The Grand Meridian Hotel blazed with lights, the red carpet lined with local media. Julian felt Olivia tense beside him as the car door opened. Cameras flashed immediately. "Mr. Reed over here." "Julian, who's your date tonight?" Julian placed his hand lightly on Olivia's back, guiding her through with practiced ease. "Just smile and keep walking," he murmured. "They're mostly local tech press." Inside, the ballroom glittered with Seattle's tech, elite and corporate donors. Julian made introductions smoothly, keeping Olivia close as promised. She handled herself with surprising grace, asking thoughtful questions about the Foundation's work. "Julian, there you are." A tall woman in a striking red dress approached, champagne in hand. The Goldmans were asking about the quantum encryption partnership. "Cassandra, meet Olivia Bennett," Julian said. "Olivia, this is Cassandra Wong, our Chief Innovation Officer, and my right hand at Quantum Reach." Recognition flickered in Cassandra's eyes she clearly hadn't expected. Julian's date to be someone outside their usual circles. "Lovely to meet you," Cassandra said smoothly. "What brings you into our tech world?" Julian Olivia answered simply, with a warm smile. "But I'm fascinated by your Foundation's work. I see the impact of educational inequality every day in my classroom." "You're a teacher?" Cassandra's interest seemed genuine now. "Art education at Franklin Elementary." Julian watched the conversation flow, pride warming his chest as Olivia engaged Cassandra about arts integration in STEM programs. Soon, several board members joined their circle, drawn to the animated discussion. "We've been trying to expand our after-school programming," explained Robert Fairchild, the Foundation's director. "But finding qualified instructors willing to work in certain neighborhoods has been challenging." "As you're approaching it from the top down," Olivia suggested. The The communities you're trying to serve already have talented people who just need resources and support. My colleague Damon runs an amazing community art program on a shoestring budget. Julian observed as his colleagues, brilliant, wealthy, powerful, people listened attentively to Olivia's insights. She spoke with the authentic authority of someone in the trenches, not seeking to impress, but to inform. Later, as they swayed on the dance floor, Julian whispered, "You're amazing. They're all wondering how I found you?" Olivia laughed softly. Here I was, worried about using the wrong fork. The evening continued, a strange but beautiful blend of their separate worlds. Julian noticed Olivia occasionally slip away too. Chat with the service staff, once helping an elderly woman find the restroom. Always returning to his side with observations he would have missed as midnight approached. They escaped to the hotel's rooftop garden. Seattle sparkled below them, the Space Needle illuminated against the night sky. "How so?" Julian said. "Verdict on Billionaire galas? Beautiful, generous, and a bit surreal," she answered honestly. "I kept calculating how many art supplies each centerpiece could buy." Julian laughed, then grew serious. "Would it bother you, being part of this world sometimes?" Olivia considered his question carefully. "Not if I can still be part of mine too. And if we can find ways to connect these worlds, meaningfully." She paused. "Would it bother you dating someone who can't reciprocate?" All this. Julian took her face in his hands. "Olivia, you've given me something I can't put a price on someone who sees me, not my bank account." As they kissed under the Seattle sky, Julian felt worlds colliding and reconfiguring, creating space for something entirely new. Breaking point: the crisis began with a headline, "Quantum Reach acquires MindSync, layoffs expected." Julian had been in back-to-back meetings when the news broke, his phone buzzing incessantly with notifications. By evening, the acquisition was trending on Seattle tech forums, with former MindSync employees already posting about unexpected termination notices. He'd been planning this acquisition for months. MindSync's neural interface technology was revolutionary, but the company was struggling financially. The board had unanimously approved the purchase. What Julian hadn't anticipated was Olivia's reaction. They'd been dating for 4 months now, settling into a rhythm that balanced their different lives. Tonight, they had plans to meet at his penthouse for dinner, a rare evening, when Olivia didn't have after-school commitments or weekend work at the bookstore. When she arrived, Julian immediately sensed something was wrong. Her usual warm smile was absent, her movements tense as she set down her bag. "Everything okay?" he asked, handing her a glass of wine. "I don't know," she said, not touching the glass. "When were you going to tell me about MindSync?" Julian blinked, surprised. "It just finalized today." "What do you, Damien's wife worked there?" Olivia cut in. "Clear out her desk. No warning. She's 7 months pregnant." "Julian? Rebecca Torres? From the UX team?" Julian ran a hand through his hair. "Olivia, I didn't personally decide who stayed and who, but you approved it," she said, her voice steady but hurt. 300 people, Julian. Families with mortgages and medical bills and children. Julian felt defensive heat rising in his chest. "That's business. MindSync was failing. We saved the company and kept over half the staff. The technology will help millions." "At what cost?" Olivia asked. "And don't say that's business, like it's some force of nature you can't control." "You are the business," Julian set his own glass down harder than intended, wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "What exactly would you have me do?" "I have responsibilities to shareholders, to the future of quantum computing." "To people," she interrupted. "You have responsibilities to people. Like Rebecca, who helped build the technology you wanted so badly." Julian paced to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seattle skyline. From 50 floors up, the city lights blurred into a glittering tapestry of anonymous lives. He rarely thought about individual stories behind those lights, and now Olivia was forcing him to. "This is why I never mixed my work and personal life before," he said finally, more to himself than to her. Olivia's voice was quiet because it's easier when no one questions your decisions. The accuracy of her observation stung, because business decisions can't always be personal. Sometimes tough choices don't hide behind corporate speak, Olivia said, disappointment evident in her voice. Not with me. Julian turned to face her. What do you want from me, Olivia? To run my company based on emotions? That's not how this works. I want you to see the impact of your choices, she said. To acknowledge that wealth and power come with responsibility beyond profit margins. She picked up her phone, scrolling briefly before holding it out to him.
Out.
Did you read any of their stories? On the screen was a social media thread from former MindSync employees, not angry rants, but stories of what the company had meant to them. Projects they'd poured themselves into, friendships formed, dreams of changing the world through technology. Julian read in silence, his jaw tightening. Finally, he looked up. What exactly do you expect me to do, Olivia? Unwind a $60 million acquisition because some people posted sad stories online. The moment the words left his mouth, Julian regretted them. He watched hurt flash across Olivia's face, followed by something worse, disappointment. I expected you to care, she said. Simply, to see beyond spreadsheets to the human cost. That's not fair, Julian countered. The foundation provides STEM education to thousands of underprivileged kids. I donate millions too. Charity's wonderful, Olivia interrupted, but it doesn't absolve you from making ethical business decisions. You can't just cause harm with one hand and donate with the other. The silence that followed felt weighted with everything they'd been avoiding, the fundamental differences in how they viewed the world, money, success. I think I should go, Olivia finally said, reaching for her coat. Panic flared in Julian's chest. Olivia, wait. Let's talk about this. We are talking, she said sadly, but we're not understanding each other. I need some time to think about us, Julian asked, hating the vulnerability in his voice. Olivia paused at the door. About whether I can be with someone whose values seem so different from mine when it really matters. She looked around the luxurious penthouse. All of this means nothing if it comes at the expense of treating people with dignity. After she left, Julian stood motionless, staring at the closed door. The penthouse felt suddenly vast and empty, its carefully selected art and designer furniture meaningless. He picked up his phone, intending to call her, then stopped. What would he say? That she was wrong? That business and ethics couldn't always align, even as the thoughts formed. He recognized the hollow ring of justification. Instead, Julian called Dominic. Get me everything on the MindSync acquisition, personnel files, severance packages, transition plans, everything, sir. Oh, it's nearly midnight now, Dominic, and clear my morning schedule. We have work to do. As rain began to patter against the windows, Julian opened his laptop and began to read about the lives his decisions had impacted. For the first time in years, he questioned not just a business strategy, but the values that had brought him to this moment of reckoning. The bridge between 3 weeks passed without contact between Julian and Olivia. For Julian, they were weeks of profound reassessment of his company, his priorities, and himself. The MindSync acquisition became a case study in what he privately called the Olivia approach, considering human impact alongside business metrics. After reviewing every personnel file, Julian had made unprecedented changes. He personally contacted laid-off employees, offering extended severance, health coverage, and priority rehiring. For Rebecca Therese, he created a remote consulting position she could maintain through maternity leave. The financial press called it eccentric. His board called it concerning. The employees called it life-changing. Still, Olivia's absence echoed through his days. He found himself noticing things he would have told her about the sunset from his office window. The street musician playing violin outside Quantum Reach headquarters. A child's drawing her employee had proudly displayed of their parents' workplace. On a rainy Thursday, Julian canceled his afternoon meetings and drove to Franklin Elementary. School was just letting out when he arrived, children streaming through the doors in colorful raincoats. He waited in his car, questioning his impulsive decision, until he spotted Olivia walking toward the bus stop. Her arms full of what appeared to be student artwork, Julian stepped out, umbrella in hand, and walked toward her. She noticed him when he was halfway across the parking lot, surprise registering on her face before she composed herself. "Can we talk?" he asked simply when he reached her. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "There's a coffee shop around the corner." They walked in silence, the umbrella creating a small shared space against the Seattle downpour. Inside the modest neighborhood cafe, worlds away from their usual meeting spots, they found a quiet corner table. "You look tired," Olivia observed after they'd settled with their drinks. "I've been working on something," Julian replied. He slid a folder across the table. "Actually, many things." Olivia opened it cautiously. Inside were documents outlining a comprehensive restructuring of the MindSync transition, news articles about Quantum Reach's unexpected policy changes, and plans for a new initiative. "You did all this because of our argument?" she asked, looking up from the papers. Julian shook his head. "I did it because you were right. I'd been making decisions at a distance, treating people as assets rather than ... people." He leaned forward. "But there's more." The last document. Olivia turned to the final page, a proposal for the Quantum Reach Foundation to partner with schools like Franklin Elementary on arts-integrated STEM education. "You want to fund art programs?" she asked, surprise evident in her voice. "With your help," Julian said. "As a paid consultant, if you're interested, your perspective changed how I see my company's role in the community. I want more of that perspective, not less." Olivia studied him carefully. "Julian, I'm glad you made these changes, but if this is just about winning me back, it's about becoming someone worthy of you," he interrupted. "Someone I can respect when I look in the mirror. The changes aren't going to stop here." He took a deep breath. "I'm establishing an ethics committee with actual power to review acquisitions and major decisions. And I'm personally meeting with teams across the company, listening to concerns." "That's significant," Olivia acknowledged, a hint of warmth returning to her eyes. "There's one more thing," Julian said. He pulled out his phone and opened a photo. The image showed a weathered brick warehouse in Fremont, not far from Olivia's apartment. "Why?" she asked, confused. "The top floors will become affordable apartments for artists and teachers. The ground floor... Julian hesitated, suddenly nervous. "I thought it could be a community art space. Gallery in front, teaching studios in back. There's even a corner that would make a perfect private studio for a talented painter I know." Olivia's eyes widened. "Julian... I remember you told me about your dream studio," he continued quickly. "This isn't me trying to buy your affection. It's me trying to build something that matters, a bridge between our worlds." Silence fell between them, broken only by the ambient cafe noise and rain against windows. Finally, Olivia spoke. "When I ended things, what hurt most wasn't the layoffs themselves, though they were painful. It was seeing you dismiss the human impact so easily, like it didn't matter." "It matters," Julian said firmly. "You helped me remember that." He reached tentatively for her hand. "I miss you, Olivia, not just because you make me happy, but because you make me better." "I missed you too," she admitted, her fingers lightly touching his. "Even while I was angry." "I'm not asking you to move in or change your life," Julian clarified. "The studio space is yours, regardless of ... US. No strings attached. And the ethics committee, the policy changes, those are permanent. Already in the company bylaws," he confirmed. "Though I'm hoping you'll consult occasionally. My executives could use some arts education perspective." A smile tugged at the corner of Olivia's mouth. "I'm not very corporate." "Hey, that's precisely why we need you," Julian said, smiling back. Outside, the rain had stopped, sunlight breaking through clouds in that uniquely Seattle way that made the wet city gleam. They walked together toward the warehouse building, Julian pointing out potential features, while Olivia envisioned possibilities. 6 months later, the bridge opened its doors, a community art center that quickly became a neighborhood hub. Julian maintained his role at Quantum Reach, but with a transformed approach to leadership. The company's new tagline, "Technology with Humanity," wasn't just marketing. It reflected genuine policy changes that rippled through the tech industry. Olivia continued teaching at Franklin Elementary, but now also directed programming at the Bridge, her own artwork, vibrant canvases, exploring connection and separation. Gained recognition in local galleries. She maintained her modest apartment, though she spent most nights at Julian's penthouse, which now featured colorful art from her students alongside museum pieces. One evening, as they sat on Julian's balcony, watching the sunset, Olivia leaned against his shoulder. "You know what I realized? We never would have worked if you hadn't been willing to change. Or if you hadn't been brave enough to walk away," Julian added, his arm tightening around her. "It wasn't about the money," she mused. "It was about values." Nodded, watching the Seattle skyline glow, golden in the fading light. "The real wealth," he said softly, "was finding someone who saw the man behind the billions and believed he could be better." Below them, the city continued its rhythm, countless lives intersecting and diverging. And in one penthouse above it, all. Two people from different worlds had built something neither could have created alone, a bridge strong enough to hold them both.